Hey, renter retires. It's Adam Schroeder here with another episode flying solo once again. And today I want to talk about something that a lot of real estate investors kind of get away from, and that is strategy. Strategy is different for every single investor out there. You could be in the exact same place financially as another investor, and y'all might have completely different strategies. And unfortunately, one of you may bounce all over the place and think, I'm going to buy this property, I'm going to buy that property, going to buy this property, that property, this, that, and never actually think about how their portfolio is going to work together. Then the other person may actually think, I'm going to buy this type of asset. I'm going to research my markets and invest in this market. And I'm going to buy assets in this market that make a lot of sense, but I'm going to stay open-minded and consider other markets if those markets make sense. So I want to tell you why this is so important. When you get started in real estate, if you only have 0, 1, or 2 properties, you are forming relationships all along the way. Relationships with insurance providers, with lenders, with sellers, and with property managers. Property management might be the most important relationship you create along the way. There are good property managers. There are bad property managers. There's property managers who'll talk with you. There's property managers who will only email with you. There's property managers who will only deal with you through a portal. But it's important to remember that all along the way, every single step, you are dealing with people. And if you remember, think about your life in general, the more people you deal with, the more likely you are to have a problem. So as you go through, I want you to start strategizing and thinking about, when I build my portfolio, if I go chasing around and just looking and seeing this ROI is 1% higher, 2% higher, the same ROI, but maybe a lower price point, or all of these things, as you're looking at them, if you're not paying attention to where you're investing, what you're going to have to do to build up that team, you're going to put yourself in potentially a really tough situation, because I can guarantee you at some point along the way, you're going to have to fire somebody on your real estate team. It might be your lender, might be your insurance company, might be the seller, but most likely it's going to be your property management team. And that is the relationship that you don't want to be starting 3, 4, 5 at one time with, because you want to be in a market with a presence, with a team that you can trust. And I will say, we've talked about it on the show before, property management is the hardest part of what we do at Rent to Retirement. I can go and I can talk to property managers, and I can find one who shows me rent comps, who's responding quickly to my emails. I see that they've got a good number of doors under their belt. And to me, they seem like they're going to be a phenomenal fit for our investors. But then they start getting investors having to actually rent out the properties that we're giving them, and sometimes they don't perform. And when that happens, we have to pivot, right? The property in the market isn't the problem. The problem is the property manager. So we have to start looking for a new one who's going to treat our clients well. And that can take a little bit of time. If you're doing this on your own, let's say you've gone and found a property in a market that we're not in, for example, you are all on your own. You're buying these properties and then hoping you can find a good property manager. And maybe you can find a manager who can place your tenant, but then you want to go and get a different, a different management company, but you're tied to a 1-year contract with your original one. It can create a big problem along the way as you go through these relationships. Now, there's always ways to get out of your contract, right? There's always a way that you can get out one way or another, whether it's waiting it out, whether it's buying it out, whether it's being a pest long enough that they kick you out. There's a lot of different options out there for what you can do when things go wrong, but it is never fun. That is one thing that is never fun. Firing people is not fun. Telling them you're leaving is not fun. Figuring out the transition from one property manager to another is not fun. Even though the property management teams will take care of most of it, it's still not fun. Setting up the new portal isn't fun. hoping that your tenants don't get upset that they're having to pay rent somewhere else is not fun. Hoping that they pay the next month's rent to the new property management instead of the old one isn't fun. It's just not a pleasant environment. You want to make sure that you have a team in the market you're investing in that is set up, that you're confident in, that you trust enough to say, I'm going to put market A on autopilot because I have enough faith in this market and this team that I can now go to market B. Now, I am not going to pretend like you're not going to see an amazing deal in a different market that maybe you want to jump on. And if it's that amazing, maybe it's worth taking the risk. But if you're looking at properties and you're evaluating pro formas, and we're only talking 1%, 2%, remember, pro formas are just estimates. They're just guesses. Our friends at TARDIS are changing lives. They helped Thurman McKenzie, who after more than 23 years of building a military pension, joined forces with TARDIS in 2020 and out-earned that pension in under 3 years using their patented income snowball method. Want to know how? Catch Thurman on the Rent to Retirement podcast, where he breaks down the coaching, investing, and simple tracking system that made it all possible. Don't miss it. Ready to map out your own income snowball? Talk with the TARDIS Wealth Coach at renttoretirement.com/TARDIS Wealth. So the idea of giving up 1 or 2 potential percentages on an investment property to add a property to your portfolio with a team you trust, in my opinion, far outweighs the ability to maybe get 1 or 2% more, but having to go out and find a new team whenever you haven't filled out your market here. And when I say fill out your market, I mean at least 3, 4, 5 properties there, so you're established, so you're confident. Maybe you've been there 1 or 2 years, possibly even longer, and making sure you're comfortable there and you've got a decent portfolio there. So that is one thing I want you to keep in mind, is don't go chasing single percentages or even 2% percentages. It's just going to be chasing your tail. There's always going to be a deal out there that looks like it might make you $20 more a month. But remember, it might. Like I said, pro formas are just best guesses along the way. Maybe the property tax valuation comes in differently than expected. Maybe your insurance ends up being a slightly different number than expected. Maybe there's a small repair somewhere that you weren't expecting. This is going to change your ROI along the way, and it can make that 1 or 2% gap be flatlined. Might even be less than that. So remember, as you go through, to really pay attention to these markets. Now, along the way, your strategy about property targeting might change, and that's all going to depend on how your savings is going, how your ability to get equity out of properties is going, what interest rates are doing, and what you can do to increase your cash flow, or like I said, pull out money from investment properties, which we have lenders who can do that. It's not the most common thing, but our lenders can help you do that. And as you go through it, and as you deal with tenants and you deal with markets, you might find that you decide that you want to change asset types. That is a much easier thing to do. You might decide, you know what, I've bought enough rehabs. I've got a good cash flow base. It's time for me to start buying better assets and better neighborhoods with better tenants, and really focus in and give up a percentage in year 1, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend that return on investment on a new build and return on investment on a rehab property are going to be the same. They're not. If we're being completely honest, they're not going to be the same. Year 1, you're probably going to be lower, almost definitely going to be lower. Year 2, you are almost definitely going to be lower than you were in your rehab. Years 3, 4, 5, if you've picked your market correctly, if you've done the right market research, now we're at a point where we're looking at returns that are more equal footing, because now your rent growth has happened at a faster rate than it was on your rehab properties. Now your equity has put you in a position where you've got a little more that you can tap into if you want. Now your tenant is staying because they can afford to pay the rent and they can afford the rent increase. Now, suddenly, we're talking about a completely different way to go. We're talking about a completely different investment. And that's in year 3, 4, 5. Now, I am not in any way, shape, or form saying don't buy rehab properties. I own them. I like them. They give me great cash flow. I've seen really good appreciation over the years, but there is a definite difference between a rehab property and a new build. That's just the way it is. Some people love, I always say, there's two real ways to diversify in real estate. There's the way of buy the most number of doors you can at a price that you can afford and just bulk up on doors and play the law of large numbers. You're in C plus B, B minus neighborhoods, and you're just buying and buying and buying. You're getting a bunch of doors. You're playing the law of large numbers, knowing that you're going to have vacancies in these properties. You're going to have repairs, but you're trusting that your other properties are going to fill in that gap and you're going to have the cash flow that you want. The other option is to sit here and buy the best quality asset you can in the best neighborhood that you can, so you can acquire the tenant that makes the amount of money that they can afford the rent increases over a time, that they can afford to, purchase properties in the area that will allow your appreciation to happen, and really focus on quality and not quantity, and end up with a smaller portfolio that is performing, let's just say, as well as the other, but it's probably less of a headache month over month, year over year. If you're going to try self-managing, I'd highly recommend pick the property that gives you the least amount of trouble to try first. And trying to self-manage and jump in on a property that you haven't been managing, that a manager has, that has had late payments on rent, has had, you know, uh, evictions and all of those things, that's going to be tough. Landlording from afar when dealing with evictions can be very tough, and late rents because the check's always in the mail, right? But if you go with a property that's stable, that you can trust is month over month is going to perform, then you learn how to really self-manage in a way that you can handle those properties that you're having potential issues with. Then you're in a completely different situation because you're comfortable doing it. You have faith in yourself. You've built out a team in that area who can help you, all of the things you want. And we have partners like Hemlane who can help you, all of those things. Avail, there's a lot of different options out there, a lot of softwares out there that can help you be more of a self-manager than just having a management team. But as you go through it, just know there's multiple ways you can build up your portfolio. You can do a little bit of a blend between those two. Build up a little cash flow, then move into new construction. Build out some new construction, then move into higher cash flow properties to really offset that. But just know as you go through it, don't bounce back and forth with strategies with every single property you're buying. Don't do that to yourself. Go in, establish a presence, feel comfortable with the whole market, and then let's talk about moving on to the next market. Then let's talk about moving into a new team completely. But please, I've seen it happen before when investors demand that they buy 3 properties in 3 different markets, and then they get overwhelmed. Then they're coming to me saying, Adam, I need help because XYZ happened and I don't know what to deal with. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I have a job, I have a family. I wasn't planning on this, but I need, my bandwidth just isn't there. Well, if you'd had a strategy day one, it would really help. And that's why we're here. That's why, we've got investment strategists for you, because our job is to make sure that you're forming a strategy that you can stick to, that you can really work with to build out. But the only way we can do that is if you're honest with us and tell us what you're wanting to get out of your real estate investing, and be honest with yourself that that's actually what you want to get out of your real estate investing. If you tell us you have a strategy and it involves, one thing or another, and it turns out that you can't handle that, well, then we couldn't have really helped you in the first place more than what we did, because we didn't know. If you come to us and want the 5% down option that we have with our investment real estate, and it's going to be negative cash flow, at least the first few years until you can refi, until the rent grows enough, just know that that is the strategy you have told us that you've told us you have the risk tolerance for. And if it turns out you don't have that risk tolerance, then we're having a completely different conversation in 1 or 2 years. And that conversation might be tough. It might be along the lines of, look, we have to deal with this the way it is And when we do, this is going to be your result. And it may not be the result you want, but it's the result you're going to get because of the strategy that you said you had the risk tolerance for, that you said you had the desire for. We really want you to come into this knowing yourself, knowing your, ability to save up, your ability to acquire, your ability to tap into capital, and trusting yourself that you're going to make the right decision along the way. 90% of real estate investors miss key tax savings by overlooking deductions. Flipping houses, managing rentals, or growing your real estate empire? Make sure you've got experts in your corner, especially when it comes to taxes. That's why we turn to Nevada Corporate Headquarters, the experts who help us reduce taxes and set up our real estate LLCs. With 35 plus years of experience and 17,000 five-star reviews, Nevada Corporate Headquarters helps you manage properties across states, navigate tax laws, and protect your assets, all with a real estate LLC. Visit nchinc.com/RTR to schedule a free real estate LLC formation and tax consultation. Plus, receive a free guide to safeguarding your assets. So head over to renttoretirement.com. Just schedule a call with us. Please just schedule a time to get on the phone and talk with us about your strategy. Let us help you figure out a strategy that's going to get you where you want to be. It might be properties with us. It might not be. It might be some with us and some not with us. That part doesn't really matter. We'd love for you to pick us and buy properties from us, of course. But our main goal, one of the main goals we have, obviously, we want to provide the best investment options to the most amount of people in areas and with deals that they couldn't get themselves. But we want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that will make you successful over the long haul. So head on over to renttoretirement.com, schedule a time to talk with us. If you have any questions you want to get answered on the podcast, or if you want to tell your story to other investors out there, email podcast@renttoretirement.com. That's podcast@renttoretirement.com. Really appreciate the time you spent educating yourselves. Really appreciate the time that you spend learning who you are and what your strategy is. I'll talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.